Recently, I have watched two shows that I thought had similar themes. I already made a video about Cassandra, where I talked about what I liked and what I didn't like, but I also recently watched Adolescence, also on Netflix. I did not make a video about this TV show because I just thought it was genius and I had nothing to say except that this is a masterpiece. But while I was thinking about making a video for Adolescence, it came to me that these two shows were about the same thing. They're about masculinity, toxic masculinity, and the consequences that it has on people. But before diving into this, let's have a brief summary of the two shows. There will be spoilers. Cassandra is a German TV show that follows a family moving in a new home. Except that home is quite unusual. There are screens in every room and a robot named Cassandra. This house was actually built in the 70s by a man who turned his dying wife into this robot. And she now has total control of the house and soon takes over the family through manipulation. As I said, I made a video about this show, so if you are interested in my opinion, you can go check it out. Now, let's talk about Adolescence. This is a 4-episode TV show that follows a young boy who is accused of murder. We follow him as he's getting arrested, we follow the detectives and the therapists. The thing about this show is that every episode was made in just one take. Each episode is an hour long and we have 0 cuts. This is quite an achievement technically, but it also allows us to feel more empathy for the family and for the people around them because it literally feels like we are with them. As I said, both of these shows explore similar topics: how toxic masculinity is dangerous and how it affects everyone, even men. Let's explore what it means to be a man according to some characters of these shows. A little trigger warning, we're going to talk about murder and violence. If you do not feel like watching this video, don't. Prioritize your mental health, not my video. Let's dive in. The first character is Horst from Cassandra. He is Cassandra's husband, and he's the one that built the house. He's a scientist, and they have a son named Peter. When Horst is pretty disappointed in his son, mostly because he does not want to play football. We have a flashback when we see the kid watch roller skating on TV, and he starts to imitate the dancers dancing around the living room. He even asks for roller skates for Christmas, but his father berates him, saying that roller skating is too feminine and will make him gay and stuff like this. But Cassandra gets him roller skates for Christmas anyway, and Horst doesn't say anything but looks very disappointed. Peter, realizing that his father thinks less of him because he likes roller skating, doesn't feel joy anymore and is never shown to use his new gift. Now grown up, he feels pressure to play football even though he doesn't care for it and is getting bullied by his teammates. His father finally seems to be proud of him, but he loses the game, making Peter feel less than once again. After said game, 3 of his teammates invite him over, but they end up beating him up and locking him somewhere. Peter comes back covered in blood and bruises. He then decides to take his parents' gun and kill his bullies. Cassandra hides every evidence, but Peter is obviously very traumatized. Because Horst was very disappointed in his son, he decided to try for another baby with Cassandra. She does get pregnant, but Horst really wants to know the sex of the baby. He puts Cassandra in his weird new machine that he is working on to determine the sex of the baby. The machine actually uses radiation and hurts Cassandra and the baby in the process. And all of this to discover that she is pregnant with the girl. Horst tries to pretend that he's not disappointed, but clearly is. The baby is born with deformities due to the machine that he used, and he considers abandoning her. They keep the baby hidden, but he quickly starts an affair with Cassandra's best friend. She gets pregnant, supposedly from her husband, but we later learn that this is Horst's child. Cassandra develops cancer because of the machine that he used on her, and she agrees to being turned into this robot thing so that she can stay with her family. But the mistress and her new son move in, confirming that this is in fact Horst's son, and Cassandra tries to kill him. Father and son die in a car crash running away from the house, but the mistress and her baby survive. That's basically the story of Cassandra. Now let's go into Adolescence. We follow a 13-year-old boy named Jamie who's getting arrested for suspicion of murder. We see him being interrogated and confronted with the evidences that he killed a young girl named Katie from his school. There actually is a video of him stabbing her, so it's pretty clear that he's guilty. So the goal of the show is to understand why he did it. In the second episode, we don't see Jamie, but we follow the detectives as they go to the school to ask questions. The revelation finally comes from the detective's son, who is a student at the school, who tells him to check Jamie's social medias. As it turns out, the girl that was murdered was bullying Jamie on social medias, calling him an incel. Incel means involuntary celibate, meaning that they don't date or have sexual relationships even though they want to. Jamie and his friends were on the internet a lot, listening to men from the manosphere. To explain a little bit this universe, if you're lucky enough to not know about it, basically, the manosphere is a side of the internet where certain men are spreading ideas about what masculinity is and how men are superior to everyone. These kind of ideas are always linked to sexism, racism, homophobia, etc. And young boys these days get more and more influenced by this kind of people who feel entitled to women's bodies and autonomies just because they have opinions. As we learn later on, mostly through the therapy episode, Jamie feels a lot of anger towards women because society is pressuring him with ideas of masculinity that cannot even apply to him because he's still just a boy. And that's why he ends up killing Katie. Now, you can already see similarities between the two stories. The thing is, they take place in two different time periods, but still deeply resonate with each other, because things have not changed that much. Those are stories of fiction, but they are not that far from reality. Women and girls are being murdered and assaulted every day. We are the collateral damage of toxic masculinity. We are just a body to be owned and to be murdered. And even though we are the victims, we are either made to be the villains or we are completely forgotten, not even named in the articles about our assassination. And usually, it's both. But that's sort of an obvious consequence. Something we think less about is the toll it takes on young boys like Jamie who are brainwashed and pressured by postcard bros that are just trying to sell them something. They are never good enough, and it's always women's fault, because they are not supposed to have the human capacity of thinking for themselves and having standards. But with these 3-month calls that Random Joe says on the internet, you're gonna be able to sleep with every girl in the 10 kilometers radius, because ultimately, that is what being a man means. Something else I want to mention is the show You. It recently came to an end with its 5th season, and it touched on the matter. The main character is a man named Joe Goldberg that stalks women and ends up murdering them and people around them. He feels entitled to their body, their love, and their attention. But he cannot take no for an answer and gets mad when they, according to him, can't see that he is trying to protect them by killing people that they love. He thinks of himself as a knight in shining armor and of them as crazy women. In the last episode of Adolescence, we see the toll that this case has taken on Jamie's family. A year after the arrest, they are still feeling the consequences. They are getting harassed and they are all deeply traumatized. We see a conversation between Jamie's parents as they are struggling to understand that the little boy they gave birth to killed a girl. The last scene of the show is absolutely devastating. We see the father crying on his son's bed, wondering what he has done wrong and where his little boy is. If this is what happens to the killer's family, you can imagine what happens to the victim's family. In the same show, we see Katie's best friend completely break down and becoming violent. Toxic masculinity impacts everyone, and it only benefits the ones that are trying to sell you something. But as I said, these shows are works of fiction, and at the end, these men get punished. Horst and Peter both die in a car crash at the end, Jamie eventually pleads guilty and stays in jail, and Joe Goldberg is also arrested. But in real life, it doesn't happen often. Men usually get away with it and find that their career and personal lives are not affected while a woman lays in her grave or in a hospital bed. And those are not just powerful people, they are fathers, children, or just talkers on the street. But it's important to make shows about men like this to let the younger generations know the consequences of that behavior, both on the perpetrator and the close ones. I didn't go too deep in this video, but there are a lot of things to say about the subject. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you soon in another video about cinema, TV shows, and music.